Okay, thanks everybody for coming. Okay. I don't think I even have to do merely an introduction, right? Because everybody knows Miriam and we're finally grateful to have her here. I really appreciate that you coming and you're feeling better and you're looking gorgeous. And so you show is yours.
Thank you. So, hi everybody. So last time I promised that I would talk about anxiety. In the meantime, I don't know, I think Arlene spoke about anxiety. But I'm going to give my 2 cents about anxiety. So, okay, so I think that first I think we're going to understand a little bit the origin of anxiety. And I'm going to split our modern day's anxiety into 2 parts, which is the emotional anxiety and the spiritual anxiety. So there's a theory that says that anxiety basically comes from a duality of the soul, or the duality of our thought. Or another way of saying it, of lack of authenticity, right? When we're not so very much sure about, 2 things. We're not so much very sure what we believe in, which is very much the spiritual anxiety. And then the emotional anxiety is very much the one that comes from the place of I'm not really sure what I want in life. I'm not really sure I'm honest with the people I live with, I love. Not necessarily the people I live with, I love, right? And not necessarily the people I love, I live with. So a lot of anxiety can come from that. It can come from, maybe not so much already in this age, but also, not very much, I love what I do, right? I do what I don't love, and I love something and I don't do it. So there's kind of 2 parts to anxiety. So we think that anxiety, like a lot of the speech about anxiety is that kind of speech of it's fate, right? And it's like, I got to take a pill and I'm going to feel better. But the truth is that pills don't take away anxiety. They maybe lower the symptoms, but they don't take away the anxiety and they don't take the cause of anxiety. So maybe you'll feel a little bit less of that sweat and a little bit, I'll tell you the truth, I'm a little bit anxious now, right? What is that anxiety? That anxiety is actually cortisol and adrenaline that is supposed to help me to be charismatic in my speech. So I need to rephrase my anxiety, right? I could come, I'm all anxious. How am I going to do this today? How am I going to do this today, right? I could explain my anxiety in that way, and then I could just stay in bed and not do anything, right? And that could hit me every day. Or I could I could rephrase it and I could say, my anxiety is healthy symptoms that are supposed to give me now charisma, and I'm going to live according to that charisma. So in every episode of feeling anxious, you got to rephrase and figure out what is making you anxious. It's not fate. You're not being punished by God. You're not being hit by, strike by whatever, the thunder of anxiety. It's not that. We need to figure out where it's coming from. A lot of times anxiety is coming from past experiences. So what happens with past experiences is that basically we come from a place of something happened to us. We felt in a certain way. We felt that sweat. We felt that short of breath. We felt that whatever it is, right? And then we keep going back to that memory. And every time something a little bit even uncomfortable happens to us, and we start feeling those sensations in our body, we automatically direct it to the subconscious memory of the first time we felt that. Now, the first time we felt that might have been when we were 2 years old, and we don't remember what the cause was. So it's very hard to dig into that. But so in that case, we want to cover both the symptoms and the cause. Sometimes we'll find the cause, sometimes not. Sometimes we'll look for it in hypnotic ways. Sometimes in less invasive ways, which is basically the same lady in a different garment, which is more like mindfulness, more like guided imagery, more like prayer. all those spiritual practices, which are basically also allowing us to invade our subconscious, but in a more mellow, in a less invasive way, that we can basically do it to ourselves, not necessarily with someone helping us do it. So, so basically, like, also like, in our days, very much we see how anxiety and depression go hand in hand, right? And also, with everything that we've been through in the last year, and with and also in the last 5 years, the levels of anxiety have risen, I don't know how many thousands of percentages, right? And rightfully so. It's really, really hard to keep yourself calm. But we need to keep reminding to ourselves, that we're not destined to it. We have control of anxiety, and it doesn't and it shouldn't have control over us. A big problem of people many times submitting themselves to ongoing taking medications that are not necessarily going to keep us alive for longer or make us feel much better or make us much healthier, or submit ourselves to psychiatric hospitalization, which is not necessarily going to make us feel better. It might save us a bit from ourselves. It might make us feel like we're in good hands. It might make us feel like somebody's protecting us from hurting ourselves, but it's not necessarily going to make us feel any better. We are the only ones who are in control to make ourselves feel better. And we need to do it in two ways. Always remember that sometimes all we can do is reduce the symptoms. And we all have the capacity to reduce the symptoms. We can reduce the symptoms with breathing. We can reduce the symptoms with taking a cup of tea. We can reduce the symptoms with music, with meditation, with sports, with movement, with allowing our blood flow, right? There are many ways of reducing the symptoms. I can tell you about myself in the beginning of the war. Just a few days into the war, I had an acute episode of anxiety. And I know anxiety very well firsthand, not from the books. I've dealt with anxiety since, I don't know, maybe 10 years old, maybe younger, I don't remember. And in my teens, I had very acute episodes of anxiety and depression. So I know it firsthand and not from the books. But anyway, in the beginning of the war, I had a very acute episode of anxiety. And I all swell up. I swell up like a bee had stung me, and my eye bulbs were like that, like completely out, and I felt like I was choking, but not the regular anxiety choking. I felt like something was in my throat, literally, and I was sure I was out. That's it, I couldn't breathe. It was awful. Anyway, with my last breath, I called Mada, whatever, or Kupat Cholim, right? And I told him, I don't think anything stung me. I don't think I smelled anything. I don't think I ate anything. It's the middle of the night, but I swell up like I ate something I'm allergic to. And they said, yeah, call an ambulance. Sure, go to the hospital. And I was like, wait a second, I am stressed. Maybe it is an anxiety attack. I've never heard of anybody who swell up like that. But who knows? Maybe it's just another way of anxiety showing its face. And I said, you know what to do in anxiety episodes. You've done it before. Yes, it's worse than ever before, but try it again. Who knows? Right? And I started breathing, and it was very hard to breathe. And I had to force myself with every bit of consciousness that I had in me, every bit of godly awareness, every bit of anything, any inner power and any positive voice that I ever had in me had to come along on board. And I started breathing, and the first one was almost impossible. The second one also. Slowly, after 5 minutes of really, really struggling, I felt like I could breathe a bit. And I didn't give up. I kept on breathing. And about 15 minutes later, I started feeling a bit better. And it was like from one breath to the other, it was just a bit better, a tiny, tiny bit. It was that bad that it took me 2 more days to lose my swellness. That's how non-imaginary it was. This is how real it was. Then later, I read online. I actually spoke to someone who's a psychiatrist. They never heard about such an episode before. So imagine I would have gone to the hospital, or I would have gone to a psychiatric hospital. They would have kept me there. Maybe I would have been lucky and there was a psychiatrist there who would have known about such a thing, and maybe not. And I would have just lied there for hours, thinking I'm dying. So, but I spoke to a psychiatrist about it, and he told me, no, I don't think it has to do with anxiety. You must have eaten something. I said it was 1 o'clock in the morning. I didn't eat anything, you know. So anyway, later I read online that there is such a thing that you can actually, there is something called an emotional allergy that responds like that. Your body actually responds just like it responds to anything, a bee sting or whatever. So like this is really my own personal experience. It's important for me to retell that story because it's like when you're in anxiety attack, you think your anxiety attack is the worst. Nobody has ever had a worse one than you did before, and you never had a worse one before. It's always the worst one you ever had, even if you had worse ones. I know it from experience. I don't know how about your experience, but I know it from my own experience. It very much feels like that. So you really have to really raise everything that is within you to decide that I'm not going to let this penetrate my consciousness. I'm really going to reverse my consciousness. I'm going to raise every positive thought that I have in me. I'm going to raise every bit of breath that I can to start breathing. I'm going to maybe put some soothing music in the background. I might take some magnesium to calm myself down. I might eat a banana to have natural magnesium instead of taking pills. If it's a little bit less horrible, like I can tell you about like a real bad time in my life when it was like generally hard for me to fall asleep every night. And I just trained myself that I take half a glass of wine, which is not very good for your brain, I must say, and for some other functions. But if you do drink wine, half a glass of red wine with a banana, and you sleep like a baby. Much better than any psychiatric pill. So, antidepressant or whatever. So, so now let's talk a bit about positive thoughts, okay, which are like a very important part of our anxiety system, right? So Judaism had talked a lot about positive thoughts. Positive thoughts, it's in general, it's really, really interesting to see how in our times, all the science is so supportive of all that Judaism has been showing us in the last couple of thousand years about positive thought, thought reinforcement. Because if you think about Judaism, that's really what it is all about. The whole idea of believing in God is the idea of reinforcing a positive thought over your instinctive thought. Your instinctive thought is always going to be negative. Science knows today that your instinctive thought is always negative. Why are you being pulled into the negative? You're being pulled into the negative because not because somebody's punishing us, not because God forbid, God hates us. Our negative thinking comes from the place of warding us from danger and protecting us from danger. That's why we're built to always look for the negative. So, and yet we need to look for the positive because the positive is the one that lets us live better, right? So you can always think about it this way, right? You keep reading the newspaper, you keep having all these apps on your phone to warn you about a missile or whatever, right? So in the meantime, maybe you know when to run from the missile. not from sure you have, not so sure that you have where to run to, right? But in the meantime, your whole emotional stability has been gone. And your whole life has been gone, right? Like you're not doing anything. You're neglecting your whole life. You maybe won't go shopping even, won't go to meet your friends, won't go anything. So I was like, with this whole war, I was like, you know what? Maybe they'll kill me, but in the meantime, at least I will live. Because at some point, maybe in the beginning, it was like, okay, if it's a few weeks, maybe we can, same with COVID, at some point I was like, forget it. How many years are we going to live like this? You can take a couple of weeks off from life, but are you going to take off from life your whole time because you're so cautious from something that will happen to you? You drive your car to work every day. You take flights to the United States. There is much more of a chance for us getting into a car crash or a plane crash, God forbid, than dying from a missile or from COVID. So, and yet somehow we have imposed on ourselves this thought in the last few years, first with COVID, now with the war, that, we got to be so cautious from it. Like a research showed that if you take a cage with 15 cute puppies and a cobra, what are you going to look at? What's going to take all your attention? The cobra, not the 15 cute puppies, right? This is how we're built. But we have to change the way we're looking. This is our whole mission in life. And how you're going to do it, whether it's through mindfulness, through meditation, or through prayer, find what it is that does it for you. But we got to find ways to change our way of thinking. That's the core understanding that we have to infuse into ourselves, is that understanding that we are in charge of our thoughts. The initial thought that comes to us, this is what the Rambam says, Maimonides, says the initial thought comes from heaven, or what we call in Kabbalistic terms, Olam Atzilut, the world of nobility, the highest realm, right? Which is God, basically. But then what we do with it is in our hands, right? So, And when you say that, like it's it comes from this, like if you don't connect to mysticism, if you don't connect to the mystical world, what I mean when I say it comes from this higher realm, it basically comes from the way we're built. We're built in a certain way, so this is where it's coming from. But we need to work on it. Just like you're not going to say, okay, I'm destined to not have money. Maybe we're really struggling financially, but I'm going to continue going to work, trying to make ends meet, trying to make a budget, trying to get a better job, trying to make my business grow better, right? I'm not going to give up on it. Same thing with my thoughts. I can't give up on fighting my thoughts to make them positive. It's really about my life and death. I really have to understand and decide that it's about my life and death. So, it's interesting. In psychology, neurology, we talk about the right hemisphere and the left hemisphere. In Kabbalah, we talk about Chokhmah and Bina that also represent our right hemisphere and our left hemisphere. And our right hemisphere is representing the sensory and the intuitive and the creative side of life. And the left one is representing our analytical, right? So our analytical side is like telling us, be careful, it might be dangerous. You have to remember, okay, you're going to drive your car more cautiously. You're going to do what you can to protect your life, right? But then you also got to be more, but then you have to connect to it. You're also creativity, right? You're not going to just sit there in the car. You might, we know that there's car anxiety also. You might sit there in the car and just freeze. Or you'll just put your creativity into it and you're going to say, okay, I can drive like this. I can, whatever, you will be a creative at figuring out how to avoid a car crash. You're going to be talking to yourself in a creative way to come up with ideas. Why is it that when it has to do with some other issues in life, most people don't suffer car anxiety, driving anxiety, but so many people suffer other kinds of anxieties to the extent that they don't leave the house? So why is it that we can give up on that or think that we can hush it up with a pill? And the problem with the pill is that maybe it hushes up the negative feelings, but the problem is that it hushes up also the positive feelings. It hushes up all the system of feeling. So if you don't want to hush up your positive feelings, you don't want to take a pill. You want to work on your negative feelings. So if we talk about it from a Kabbalistic point, there's also an interesting way of looking at it. There's called Aven b'chokhmah v'chakem b'bina. Again, the bina represents the creative side, and the chokhmah represents the analytical side. So you say Aven b'chokhmah v'chakem b'bina. You basically want to cross path, right? You basically want to kind of like interact your right and hand neurons, that they should talk to each other, right? So that you can create a combination of thought that has to do with analytical thought and creative thought. Okay? So what happens in your body when you get into anxiety? You're not analytical. You're completely sensorial, right? Sensorial, you say? Sensory? Sensory. Okay. What? Sensorial? Whatever. Yeah, sensorial works. So what happens when you get into an anxiety mode, you're not analytical. It's very hard for you to start thinking in that moment, what is going on in my life that I got into this anxiety? And trust me, for the millions of patients I had over the years, clients I had over the years, every client I've spoke to always told me, I have no idea why I'm anxious, right? Nothing happened in my life, but I can sit in anxiety day in and day out for a few weeks, and then it disappears. And then I have a few good days, and then I go back into it, and I come out of it. And people always talk about it like it's fate, but it's not. Just nobody taught them to take a grasp or control of their thought process. So we can teach that to ourselves, and there are a few ways of teaching it. So sometimes we can use our analytical mind to do it, but sometimes we need to learn to use our creative and sensory abilities. Yeah. So supposedly, supposedly you're feeling like a bad moment now. Okay, think of like a bad moment. Close your eyes for a moment. Okay, and think of like a bad moment, and feel like what's happening in your body. Think of something maybe not so pleasant that happened to you, or that you're dealing with, and feel what's happening in your body. Okay. Anybody wants to share something, or how you feel? Like, how do you feel it in your body? You feel the body tensing up a bit? Feel your muscles crunching a bit?
No, I'm kind of thinking yada, yada, yada.
I want to go to sleep.
No, I'm thinking yada, yada, yada. Tell me about it. You're normal. When someone says to you, what are you anxious about? It just goes to the same thing.
When someone's what?
Someone says, what are you anxious about?
Right.
Well, it just goes back to the anxiety root. I know what the root of my anxiety is. You said to me, okay, think about it. And that's what I'm saying, well, yada, yada, yada. I was thinking about it on the way here. And I'll think
about your anxiety.
Yeah.
Okay, about your episodes of anxiety.
Yes.
Okay. Now I want you to do something else. Okay, close your eyes and feel, okay, close your eyes and feel you're holding an orange in your hand. Okay? And imagine that juicy orange. And you're taking a bite on it, and you feel the juiciness coming out into your tongue and spreading all over your mouth and filling it up with juicy orange flavor. If you're not into oranges, you can do it with anything else.
Pineapple.
Pineapple, okay? Whatever works for you. But feel the juiciness of that flavor that you're so in love with, okay? And let it spread in your mouth. Let it spread all over you. Let it fill you up with sensation. Breathe it in, feel it in you. Keep thinking about that juiciness of that fruit or the flavor, whatever it is that you love most. And feel it, how it's spreading. Okay, now you can open your eyes. How did that feel versus when you were thinking about the anxious episode in your life? Did you feel a difference in your body, in your muscle tension, in your breathing?
Yeah, I felt like a little kid.
Feel like a little kid?
Yeah.
Okay.
I feel like when the teacher said to us once, for the rest of this class, do not think about the colour green.
But that never works, right?
Right, and
Right.
that is a killer.
You can't,
So
right,
you know what, I'm going to think about orange. No, I'm not.
right.
So,
But that's your inner resistance.
yeah, sure, it's
Right.
a game.
Right. But if you want to be in the game, you can infuse upon yourself, or you can, force yourself to think about what it is. Now, it might take you a few minutes, right? Just like it took me a few minutes, because my choice was to run to the hospital, and from another medical episode that I had a few months earlier, remembering how they tortured me there for hours, and until they gave me a pill that they could have given me in the beginning, right? And when I thought about it, I was like 1 a.m., not feeling like being in the ER the whole night, when you're only young doctors and not the professionals. Who wants that? I may as well try to deal with it myself, right? With anxiety, it's not a heart attack. You're not dying. You don't need the hospital. But so many people end up in the hospital with anxiety attacks, torturing themselves through a whole night or whatever, a few weeks in the psychiatric hospital, and not really getting help. But with those kind of techniques, and there are other techniques also. Do we have some paper and pen here? A few papers and pen yeah? Not for me, for to spread around the people.
I have some paper, but not pen.
Not enough for everybody?
I do have paper, but not pen.
You can also use your phone if you have something that you can,
Does anybody
Yeah,
want?
I was worried.
The phone has a
if you have the phone pen. Actually, pen and pencil is much better. It does it better than the phone, brain-wise. But
I have
I have an egg pen.
People can come up with it.
It has no ink.
Here, does anybody want paper? Paper?
I might have a couple. I want to give you an exercise.
Oh, here's okay.
Yeah.
Here, do you want paper?
If somebody else needs a pen,
Here, see if these work.
who wants a pen? You have a piece of paper?
Okay.
Here. Oh, thank you.
You might ask for paper.
Here.
It's fun.
If you need
Here.
more paper, I have more.
Not green paper though. Not green.
Anybody needs more paper?
Anybody, you want to give his pen to somebody?
Okay, when you're ready. So when you're ready, sign your name. But leave space for something else. Sign your name. Now, sign your name from the end to the beginning.
Not different hands.
Not different hands, from the end to the beginning.
Instead of writing in Sharon, writing.
I was worried that you would give me a pen that would work.
Is it working? It's not working. You feel lucky?
Anxious. As soon as you get to like,
Sorry. You feel lucky that your pen isn't working?
You should just write down our name.
That sign your name and then sign it from the end to the beginning,
Backwards.
backwards. Yeah.
Okay.
What?
He said his name is Bob. People are just troublemakers.
Yeah, but I know, right? It's like it's like I'm still in high school.
Maybe another one.
Now I know what I'm looking at this section.
If your name is plural.
Did you do it?
L.
Did you do it? Did you succeed? Yeah, good for you. Let me see.
Here we go.
Wow, call it kavod. Unbelievable. Good for you.
Can you sign your name backwards?
Good. So perfect. Yes. So yeah. But it's your signature or your name?
It's my name?
Try it with your signature.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, try with your signature. Signature is more complicated, but it's doable. You want a piece of paper?
Yeah, just two. Like, oh,
You have a pen to give him for a moment? Thank you. Here. You're welcome.
Is it your whole name or just your first name?
Your signature.
Your signature.
Oh, it's our signature.
If you're Israeli, it doesn't matter.
What?
Because Israelis use that check
Right.
mark with their signature.
Yeah, I can't do that.
It's hard. It's a little hard, but it's doable. Right. But the idea is that what happens in those moments is that you're basically creating a new neuronic connection. And when you're basically making a new neuron connection, you're driving yourself into a creative mode. And you're driving yourself out from being busy thinking. You can do it with anything. There's many ways that you can do it with. But this is a pretty good one, I think, to really drive yourself out of doing. You could be saying this is a stupid psychological trick, right? But who cares if it's going to help you and it doesn't do any harm, right? So once you get yourself out of that analytical stage or state of mind of my life is so bad, and you get focused on something else. Now, of course, in that moment, it's very hard to start doing your math exercise or read a philosophy article or whatever it is, right? But this is like a simple trick to get yourself out of the victim mode and out of that, cycle of bad thinking and just do something. Take yourself out of there and do something else. And you create a neuronic connection that is doing something else to your brain, gets you into a different place. Go ahead.
Yes, actually, that's what it really works, because when I was younger, I had to go with the bus, and it was quite boring, and going to the school, to the university, whatever. So I started to do everything with words, what I've seen, in order to find new words, So right now I can really make everything with words, everything, right away, And it worked. It brought me really in a different stage. It brought me really away from anxiety, from everything, It just was really searching for words, searching for sentences, whatever.
Right.
So
It's like when we were little, our parents would tell us, if you can't fall asleep, start counting sheep, right?
Yeah.
It comes from the same world. And some of our simple ideas that we used to have back from our grandmothers are the best ideas wherever on the planet. But really, we're coming up with more and more ideas, but what we're coming up with is more and more explanations of why those things work. So in the past, if somebody would tell you from a religious point of view or from a grandma point of view, do this and that, you would be like, oh, that's stupid. But today, we have all this science backing those ideas, understanding why those things work, and they work. Yeah.
Okay, anxiety is my friend.
Okay.
I know it very well. And a couple of things I wanted to contribute. One is, I believe that most anxieties are a subset of the fear of the unknown. And if you can work on that and have a generalized approach on that, you can use that for the others. For example, the Israeli solution is the Beseder, okay? It'll be fine. And you can use that with other things. There was a third thing, but I forget. That's what my anxiety is, you know. I've lost my memory.
It eats on our memory.
Yeah, right.
Right.
But anyhow, so just a little story from when I was a kid. I was 8 years old. I was playing on a baseball diamond. And this actually was one of 2 baseball diamonds that faced each other backwards, like this, you know. And I'm in the outfield, of course, because I wasn't that great a player. And all of a sudden I hear behind me, heads up, which if you don't know, it means there's a high flying ball in the air. Spotted, don't get hit by it. And I turn around, I can't see it. I run to the right about 20 yards, I bend down and put my hands on my head, and I get hit spot on by the ball. And it sort of gave me a lesson that you really can't run from some things.
And that proves just my point.
Yeah.
Because we're living in 2 realms. We're living in the physical realm and the emotional realm, right? I can't, in a way, I can. I cannot change my reality, but I can change my reality with my thoughts, which actually brings me to the second part of what I wanted to talk about. Because, I forgot how you say it in English. In quantum physics, they did this experiment of like the double cracks. Anybody heard about it?